Piece of cake.
You ready?
Super foggy out this morning. All right, folks, welcome back to Fabrication 101. We're going to start working on the dump truck turned into a pond filter this morning. I'm not going to be using the dump truck portion of this thing. I'm just going to be using the front half of the cab. Some people are not going to like this. Yes, this thing probably could be saved. The back of the cab has a huge dent in it, which is fixable. The floor is pretty rotten. But, you know, it's actually not that bad. But for what I'm doing with it, it's what I wanted. And that was what I could find at the time that I started this project. So today we're going to start working on building the custom filter that's going to go in the engine compartment. And the idea here is that it's kind of dark in there, but the idea is going to be that the filter is going to sit back there. We'll filter the water in addition to some other stuff I'm going to do in the pond, but the water's going to come out, and then this grill, the water's going to come out right here, and then that's going to be the starting waterfall for my pond that I'm going to build in my backyard. I'm going to look for some low wattage, maybe LED, solar powered LEDs that can go in the headlights. So that they'll light up. This thing is going to be facing my patio, so I don't want them super bright. So if any of you guys have any suggestions for lights I might put in there, leave them in the comments below. All right, here's a bunch of aluminum I brought home. I went ahead and, to make my life a little easier, I went ahead and had it sheared into the sizes I needed. It costs a little bit of extra, but if it saves me a bunch of time cleaning and grinding, then it's probably worth it, in my opinion. I'm going to be TIG welding all this stuff together, and plasma cutting will work, but you have to really clean all that oxide layer from the plasma cutter off of the welds to get nice clean aluminum welds. It's amazing. I don't think it rained last night, and everything is wet. This was all in the back of my truck, so everything's still wet. I need to clean it all off and get it sorted out, and then we'll start putting things together. Alright, so that was kind of quick and rough, but now what I've got is an adjustable rest that I can adjust up and down, kind of lock in place, and it gives me a place to slide my hand while I'm running these long welds. And I kind of had to make it adjustable. If I want to do this weld here, I need to be able to slide up here, and I can actually set my hand on it. I can adjust this a little bit more if I need to. And it should be able to let me run a pretty nice consistent weld feed. You know, clamp that up a little bit so make sure it doesn't move on me, but I should be able to run my welds nice and smooth now. So it's a little quick, a little dirty, made out mostly, pretty much entirely out of scrap. So something I forgot to do before I got this all tacked together was build these things, and these are going to be the dividers for my filter media. So this is going to go in here. I'm going to tack these two pieces of angle iron with this flat strap in between it, and create these two kind of big C channels that are going to run down these walls on this side and then one on the top side. Hopefully I can at least get them reasonably well tacked in there. They don't need to be super strong, but they do need to stay in place, and so hopefully I can do that without having to pop the bottom of this tank off. So one thing to consider when you're buying this kind of aluminum from places like hardware stores or Home Depot, big box stores, that kind of place, is sometimes this stuff comes with a clear anodizing on it, and that can negatively affect your welds if you're trying to weld it. So what I like to do is, I know I'm going to weld on this edge, is I'll just run some sandpaper over it to kind of clean off that the anodizing, and it also helps to thin out the oxide layer on the aluminum before you go and weld it. So here's kind of a little trick for tacking up kind of awkward parts. Basically, I'm going to try to tack this like this, and get a tack weld right here on this corner. And you can see it's kind of tricky to hold. It's going to be really tough TIG welding wise to do this without using both hands, or with having one hand hold it like this. Yeah, there's lots of kind of cool fixturing tools I could probably figure out to hold this, but I'm kind of lazy. And so one of the tricks I like to do, especially with TIG, is I'll take like this piece, and I'll put a little dab of filler right here on the end. And then when I go to do my tack weld, I'll hold the two pieces and put pressure on it so it'll hold it apart, and then when I heat it, it'll melt the two together and create my tack weld. So let's go ahead and try that real quick, see how well this works out for me. Alright, so there's my big daub of filler. Now we'll see if we can't get these two to cooperate with me. And I just shoved my filler metal all the way across the table. So I'm going to squeeze it like that. I kind of want to try to, I'm still trying to do the little bit of a half lap on this. So I'm going to hold it like this. I'm going to put some pressure on it. And hopefully I can get my torch hand figured out here before I lose control of all this stuff. Like that. You can see how that tacked together real nicely for me. Then I can go ahead and do the other side. The other side I can go ahead and do with filler, so I can align it the way I need it. I can get everything lined up pretty close anyway, and I can go ahead and make my tack weld. There's some contamination on the end of that. I must not have got all that oxide off. Then the next piece, so I'm going to make sure this is pretty, oh, it's a little out of square, but we can fix that. So then this piece is going to go on like this on the opposite side, and I can do the same kind of thing, but I'm going to want a little bit more filler on this end. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put a little blob of filler on the end of this piece, and then I'll my pieces to line up here. You don't want to cooperate with me. Well, that looks pretty good. Okay, at least on that end I got all three tacked together. It looks like I got to tweak that just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and tack this other side. This one's not as pretty because there's some contamination in that tack, but I'm going to go ahead and go with it. So that's one tack. I do need to kind of tweak these a little bit to get them to line up. They are going to need to lay flat in there, so they create these 2.5-inch wide channels. And then my filter media will slide down inside of those. So what I'll probably do is just lay this out and do a couple of intermittent welds. I don't need to weld this thing fully. I'll probably just do a little bit on each end and one in the middle, and then we'll call it done. So one of the things I like to do when I'm doing intermittent welds or spaced out welds is I like to put a tack at my stopping points, and then I can weld to my tack welds. I use the screwdriver just as a quick scribe. I didn't want to put Sharpie marks right where I'm going to be doing some welding. So aluminum is kind of particular about cleanliness. So there's no guarantee that, you know, cleaning the Sharpie marks off is going to make much of a difference, but I like to think that it probably does help. So I'm going to put a tack here. I'm going to put a tack here at the end of this one, and this one I'm probably just going to go ahead and run this weld, and then I'll backstep my welds across the pieces. My little hand block moved. So now you can see why I put these in here. This is where my filter pads are going to slide in up and top. So this thing is laying on its side right now. So the water will come in back here somewhere, I haven't quite decided yet, go through the filter and then spill over here into another tray that I have to build still that's going to hold some other filter media. But for now, I think I'm good enough that I can go ahead and start welding all these seams up.
Moments later.
All right, the first part of this filter box is welded up. Oh, that's a lot of welding. I'm probably gonna have that pulsing, hear that pulsing in my, while I'm trying to sleep tonight. Not spectacular welds, not complete disasters. You can see there's a couple spots. This is kind of an evidence that I dipped my tungsten right there at the end of the weld. And I did it a few times. I'm not perfect. I'm wondering how many leaks I'm gonna run into. I'm betting that there's gonna be a few. All right, so the next step is gonna be to build the front part of this box, but I figured I might as well fill it with some water. And let's see if we have any leaks. All right, so far I don't see any too crazy. I can only fill it up to this front edge before it's gonna start to run over that, although it is tipped a little bit backwards. So we'll get it filled up with water and we'll let this sit while we're putting the other piece together, and then we'll come out and look at it and see if it's got any crazy leaks. Like I said, so far it's so good. So that part's all tacked together. You might, if your eyes are open, you might notice that this part is shorter. This is gonna be the spillway out of the filter, and I'm gonna have to build a little ramp or something to reach the grill, but this is gonna be another area where water is gonna have time to sit. There'll be some what's called biological media in here, which is a place for bacteria to grow that will help clean all the nutrients and stuff out of the fish tank, out of the water for the fish, and probably turtles eventually. Well, I don't see any obvious major wet spots. There's a little bit of a damp spot there, but I'm not sure if that's from when I pulled the hose out. It's hard to tell. I don't feel anything wet down there. But I don't see anything significant. There's definitely no water spraying out the sides, so. Try not to slide this thing around on this metal table quite so much. Or steel table, I guess I should say. And this should sit right here. It looks pretty good. I think I'll go ahead and tack it. I'm gonna have to push up here to try to close that gap up, but that shouldn't be too much of an issue. And grab my tackaroo gun, give it a little tackaroo, a little tacky. We'll see if we can figure out a way to shim that up to take up that other gap. The way I did it last time is I took my trusty box of shop towels and my trusty block of aluminum and kind of wedged it in here. But then I had to take a screwdriver and add it to the mix to see if I can get this sucker to close up. Whoops. Well, there she is, all finished welded. Some of these fillet welds were a challenge. This one wasn't too bad. The ones underneath really challenged me. The material warped quite a bit when I went to weld it. I probably should have done a few more tack welds in there. Oh well. I don't think it'll leak. To be perfectly honest, it's not going to be the end of the world if I have to run some silicone on the inside of these seams to kind of seal it up a little bit better. Some of these came out really nicely. I'm pretty pleased with the way they came out. So, very happy. So, again, if you're wondering how this is supposed to work, this is a water filter for a pond that I'm going to be building in my backyard. This filter is going to go in the engine compartment of that 1952 GMC dump truck, although it's not going to be a dump truck. I'm going to cut it in half. I've got some filter media pads that are going to slide down in these slots. There's one there and one there. The water will come in back here somewhere. I haven't quite decided that yet. As it fills, it'll go through the filter media. It'll fill up, overflow this, because this is actually going to be about the same height as the top of the filter media. So even once the filter gets plugged up, it's just going to go over top and then come through. And then in here, I'm going to have some different, what we call biological media. And that is stuff that's like plastic balls, or I've even seen plastic pot scrubbers, or coral rock, or not coral rock, volcanic rock. It's basically a place for bacteria to grow that will eat all the nutrients and nitrates out of the water to protect the fish, and probably turtles, to be honest. So that's going to end it for this video, folks. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. Feel free to shoot me any questions on this. Let me know what you think. I'm pretty pleased with the way this come out. Yes, I could have done this a lot cheaper and a lot easier, but I like to work with aluminum. I don't get to do it very often, and this was a really good excuse to really practice some aluminum, play with pulse welding settings on my machine, and just get some arc time or hood time throwing down some aluminum beads. Yeah, they're not perfect, but I'm pretty pleased with them. So that's going to do it for this episode of Fabrication 101. I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you guys haven't already, like and subscribe. If you know somebody who'd be interested in this content, share it with them, send them a message, say, hey, check this clown out and see what he's working on. And I will see you guys in the next episode of Fabrication 101. In the meantime, do me a favor, do yourself a favor, and go build something.